It's 7 o'clock. I'm going to call the May 20th, 2025 meeting of the White Bear Lake Conservation District Board to order. We have a quorum. Thank you for being here. We've called to order. The next item on the agenda is approval of agenda. Does anybody have any adjustments that they would like to make to tonight's agenda? Mike.
Under lake quality, I would like to add on the very bottom, swimmer's itch letter.
Swimmer itch what?
Letter.
Letter?
Itch letter.
Anybody else?
Yeah.
Scott?
I'd like to add, under my area, the approval of funds for Starry Stonewort signage. Okay. You got that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that already covered under?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's not add that because that's going to be under treasurers. Are you okay with that, Scott?
Yeah, if we're talking about the signs too.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, would anybody like to make a motion to approve the amended agenda?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, that passes. Next item is approval of previous board meeting minutes. Would anybody like to make any adjustments to the April 15th, 2025 board meeting minutes? Would anyone like to make a motion to approve those minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of last month's board meeting.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the April 15th, 2025 meeting minutes. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, that passes. Next item is a public comment time. We allow or set aside 15 minutes at each meeting for the public to come and make comments on items that are not on the meeting agenda. And would anyone like to take advantage of that 15 minutes? If you could just tell us your name, address.
Hello, my name is Chris Housey, and I live at 11120 121st Street North. And that's Stillwater, May Township, Minnesota. I'm here tonight to bring to your attention a plan for a private school expansion that's within 5 miles of White Bear Lake, and it's actually in Hugo. That school is seeking to use over 15,000 gallons per day of water by drilling multiple wells. I'm guessing that this body is aware of the 2017 court ruling against the DNR for issuing water appropriation permits for over 10,000 gallon wells within 5 miles of White Bear Lake. However, we have been made aware of an instance where the private school seeking to expand is planning on drilling multiple wells on the same site, pulling over 15,000 gallons a day from the aquifers. Basically, in my opinion, they're doing that so they can circumvent that 2017 court ruling, getting around the DNR's need for the water appropriations permits. I'm not sure if this body is aware of that plan or has any interest in limiting the school's water use or getting them to comply with the intent of that 2017 court ruling. Perhaps you have contacts at the DNR or somewhere else that you can discuss this and question why they're being allowed to draw more than 15,000 gallons a day.
Okay. Any questions for Chris?
What's the school?
The school is Liberty Classical Academy. It's currently based in White Bear Lake. And I do have some documentation here that shows they went to the engineering firm SEH. SEH filed with the DNR 3 separate requests for wells, all under 10,000 gallons a day. The DNR's response on that was that no DNR permit was needed because they're under 10,000 gallons a day on the individual wells. But if you read the court ruling, the DNR was asked to not only look at individual wells, but the cumulative wells effects as well. So I'm not sure why the DNR didn't pick off the fact that these 3 permits were all requested by the same person or the same institution on the same property. And if you look at the documentation here, it shows that these were submitted to the DNR roughly 2 minutes apart. So they should have picked that off. So I'm not sure if you're interested in the documentation.
Yeah, if you have those spare, yeah, you can just hand them to Sherry if you would.
Can I get the spelling of your last name, please?
H-A-U-S-E.
Another question. So the wells, I know that that school is maybe going to be phased, the construction, and do you know, are the wells all intended to go in initially, or will they be phased over time?
Our understanding is that they were submitted all at the same time. I can only assume that they will be drilled at the same time as well.
Okay. Okay, Chris?
And did you bring up to the DNR, does the DNR know about the problem, or have they
When
said
we
it?
talked to the area hydrologist, the DNR area hydrologist, and asked them about the school's ability to draw more than 10,000 gallons per day, he said that based on the court ruling, they are not allowed to drill a single well 10,000 gallons a day, but there is this loophole that they're using to circumvent that court ruling by submitting 3 separate well applications, all for wells under, each well being under 10,000 gallons a day.
So it sounds like they don't plan on closing that loophole?
We're getting conflicting information from the DNR, so that's why we're hoping you folks have some more contacts or higher up contacts at the DNR that you could contact and figure out what is going on here, because we're being told on one hand that the loophole's been closed, on the other hand, no, they still allowed to go ahead and do that. So that's our concern, is that not only for the aquifers in our area and our private wells, but as well as the lake levels and the issues that White Bear Lake has been seeing with, large water usage in the area.
Okay, any additional questions for Chris?
No.
Or from Chris? Okay, well, I'll say this. Thank you for bringing this to our attention. And we'll take it up at the executive committee, and we'll see if the board wants to take any action.
Okay. I will leave my contact information with her so that...
That'd be great.
Yep.
Okay, thanks again.
All right.
Okay, would anybody else like to take advantage of the 15 minutes? Okay, we'll move on. Next item on the agenda is new business, City of White Bear Lake rental lease approval. Mike?
The City of White Bear has offered us a 3-year rental lease, which is, the price goes up each year like $5, so it's really a lease, it's a good lease. So I'd like to make a motion that we accept and sign the lease May 1st, 2025 through April 30th, 2028.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the lease. Any discussion? Yep, Susie?
What are we currently paying?
100.
Okay, so it's just $5 increments? Okay.
Okay, do you have any concerns about the lease, Sherry?
Not at this time.
Okay, any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, that passes. I'm sorry,
is
next
the-
item, White Bear Lake Fireworks Fund donation approval. Mike?
Okay, we have in the past donated $100 towards the fireworks fund, and it's one of the most identifiable things that happens on White Bear every year. It's kind of a tradition for a lot of people. So it's nice to be involved in it, and so I'd like to make a motion that we donate $100 towards the fireworks fund for this year.
I'll second. We have a motion and a second to approve a $100 donation to the fireworks fund. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, that passes. Next item on the agenda is a wake safe map for White Bear Lake. That's me. So an organization, I think it's Minnesota Lakes and Rivers, yeah, thanks, has offered us an opportunity to purchase a map that shows what they consider the safe area, or yeah, let's call it that, safe area for wake boats to operate, which is more than 20 feet of water depth and a minimum of 500 feet from the shoreline. And the purchase price would be $150, is that right? Or $175? Sorry, I should know. $150. Oh yeah, thanks for that. $150. So I would just, before we have any motions around this, I'd just like to have some discussion. What do we think about that? And I'll just start. One is, the science is still being developed on best practice. In my opinion, the science is still being developed on best practice for, the large wakes produced by these boats. But it's narrowing in, and my understanding is that, more than 20 feet of water depth and at least 500 feet from the shore may be where things are headed. So that's one item. A second item is the board hasn't made any decisions on what we want for White Bear Lake. And so a question, if we order this map, does that imply support of those parameters, 20 foot of water depth, 500 feet from shore? So those are some things I'm thinking about. Anybody have any other thoughts? Chris?
I agree 100% with your thinking, unless there's like more of a, I don't know if it's science or more data points and some feedback on it. I don't think you do anything that just says we're jumping the gun and we're all against wakeboard boats, because I think there's people that have them, they like them. Most of the people I've seen on the lake are respectful about it. But I think we need some more info for sure.
Scott?
Yeah, and just, the email that you got from Jeff at Minnesota Lakes and Rivers said, well, gee, this is what the DNR is proposing as the best practice, and it's supported by scientific research. And he gave a link to the last one that came out of the wake study, and that did not contain those recommendations. Basically, it was about the characteristics of waves. For example, it said that a wake boat at 500 feet is equivalent to a regular speedboat, a runabout at 425 feet. But it didn't say it has to be 500 feet from shore. There's no science about actually measuring the erosion on a floor. And as to the 20 feet, there's no recommendation on that. The implication is if it's less than 20 feet, it can disturb plants. But it doesn't say that in that research. So I'm thinking that they're overreaching what the research says. And I would like to find out what the DNR actually says. Are there DNR scientists who go, well, yeah, that's what the research says? Because I don't think the research actually says that.
Okay, Susie?
Wasn't there a study being done by the University of Minnesota that said 300 feet? I don't remember that they had a depth parameter, but they had a shore parameter.
And my recollection is that, yes, there is work being done by the U of M.
Yeah.
But I don't know what the current status of that research is. So I don't have an answer to that. And one other thing I should add is, they like to produce these maps for various lakes in bunches. Not sure why that is, but that's what they would prefer. And it's possible that in the future, the opportunity to get a map would come available to us as well. So I don't think this is a, if we pass, we lose it forever kind of a thing. Okay, well, yep, thanks.
And according to this, the DNR's official recommendation is simply to stay 200 feet from shoreline. So they don't have a position as far as depth of water, but that's their general guidance, is 200 feet from shore. Just FYI.
Okay, thanks for that, Alan. Okay, well, unless somebody would like to make a motion to purchase this particular map, I think that we can just move on.
Yep.
Okay, so we'll move on. Next item, DNR request for comment, White Bear Yacht Club riprap project. So the White Bear Yacht Club has some fabric along the shore with riprap over it. The fabric is failing a little bit, and that's allowing some erosion of the subsoil. And they want to take that out, replace the fabric, and replace the riprap. And they will, with the riprap, they're going to use some different sizes of riprap to try to get better coverage, using some large riprap and small riprap. The DNR is currently requesting comments on that project. And so it's a question for the board. Do we want to offer any comments on that project? And does anybody have any thoughts on that? Meredith?
I have a question. It was unclear to me how much of that project is below the ordinary high water level, if any of it.
Right.
And we've never seen a permit from the DNR before on riprap, so I'm wondering why we've never ever seen one before. Why is this the first one we've ever seen on riprap?
You know, it might be construction within a certain distance of the lake.
I think it is in relation to the ordinary high water mark, so some of it must be below some portion
Yeah,
of the
and you would
work they have to
assume
do.
that, I think, just because if the water never hits it, then why would they need the riprap? Alan?
A couple of points. Certainly, the DNR is going to get involved if it's below OHW, and usually one of the watershed districts will be within probably 20 or 50 feet, even next to it. So there's usually a couple of permits there. And I think riprap is specifically regulated by DNR. So certainly, to answer your question, it's going to be below OHW, because that's why you put it in there, to keep your shoreline from getting gnawed away.
Meredith?
Yeah, I certainly understand the concept of riprap, but I wish that they would have put the ordinary high water mark on the diagram so we could understand what we were going to make comment on, because we only have authority below that mark.
Kind of looks like one in the diagram, but I do think it just needs to be documented to say where it's at. And I think that's an easy thing. If you look at that one, it's like there's a line that goes through the middle of the riprap, which I think implies like maybe the OHWL. But I think it's an easy measurement to figure out.
Yeah. So you think we have authority on part of the
I'm
riprap?
saying if you wanted a better diagram on it, yeah, you could get a better,
I'd say just stay out of it.
sure.
I would say that the district's opinion would be that we would prefer not to have riprap properties on this lake because it allows more phosphorus into our water. We prefer trying to manage the shoreline in other ways, or adding a rain garden or something that allows less phosphorus getting into the water. It's
Yeah,
just
but
a
you gotta
comment
look
we're
at the-
making. It's not going to probably change what they do, but.
I mean, you can see it's already starting
Chris?
to lose shore too. Like, I mean, that's the other part. We don't want to lose property on the lake either,
No,
right?
no.
It's like they want to maintain at least, and riprap's about the only thing that saves that from all that ice, right?
But they certainly could add some plantings that would pick up some phosphorus.
Yeah.
If we were going to make a comment, that's what I would suggest.
Scott?
Yeah, I mean, our official position is that we should look at natural vegetation. I mean, this is what we're saying in our shoreline piece that we're putting in the Laker, is that it's always preferred to do natural vegetation. And really, I think our comment is that they should at least evaluate that to see if it's possible. And I don't know my guess is probably not a possible thing in their particular case. And they already have riprap, so they're just fixing it. So I'm not highly opposed, but I think they really should be looking, as a lake, we want less riprap and more natural vegetation. I mean, I think that's our position.
Okay, Sherry?
I mean, in their alternative, their secondary plan, they say do nothing, just add a little bit more on top of that. I mean, where is there a way that they can do both? I mean, I agree with what Meredith and Scott are saying.
Okay. I'm going to make a motion that we allow Sherry to prepare comments to the DNR that would include a general support for stabilization of the shoreline, a request that they evaluate natural vegetation in lieu of some or all of the riprap, and that they provide a diagram to show where the ordinary high water level is relative to the project. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I'll abstain as member of the yacht club.
Oh, okay, thank you. Any other discussion?
Maybe we could see if they could add in any native plantings around the riprap to mitigate some of the phosphorus, if that would be at all part of their plan. I'm not opposed to this at all, but I think we should take the position of protecting water quality.
So I have, that would include general support for stabilization of the shoreline, request that we reevaluate using natural vegetation in lieu of all or some of the riprap, and show where the ordinary high water level is in relation to what?
The project.
The project.
And then, and maybe you can just supplement that second point with vegetation adjacent to the riprap to help with phosphorus control. And I don't, Chris, did you second that?
Yep.
Are you okay with that amendment to the motion?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, that passes. Next item, Patel Magali, permit application 2025 non-commercial multi-user dock permit, identical last year. Mark.
Yeah, this is also going to come up in the public hearing. So do we wait for that, or do we do this now?
I think that what we've done in the past is, and I think the LUC did this, is approve up to 300 feet. And then in the public hearing, we'll address extending beyond that.
Got it.
So would someone like to make, I think the LUC approved it?
Yes.
And so would someone like to make that motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the up to 300 feet. And it is in our ordinances that two adjoining properties can combine their docks, and that is very shallow there. So I'd like to make a motion to approve the application for a permit
Up to 300 feet?
up to 300 feet.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the application up to 300 feet. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, that passes. Okay, it's after 7:10. So we will begin the public hearings where there are two items, and these will be separate public hearings, one for the one item and one for a second. And Chris, would you mind setting these up a little bit for us?
I got lost there. Sorry, I missed that. I'm very sorry.
No, no,
I'm sorry. We're back to the Patel and the East Shore.
Yeah, so
for the variance.
Yeah, so if you could just set that up
Yep.
for us.
Sorry about that.
No, that's all right.
For the Patel, when they combine the dock, they want to go past. In the diagram, that's the only thing. I think it's not 400, but it looks like
375.
375 roughly with the, I got to measure the boxes there, but that gets them out to where their boat has enough draft. And it's the same as what they did last year, and it worked out. We had some suggestions last year to where they put lights on it and some other things, and it actually looked pretty good. It's long, but it did work for them, and I didn't hear many complaints on that last year. And then for the East Shore, they did 12 feet last year. This year, they're asking for 20, just with the depth, because 12 kind of worked, but they ended up yanking out boats where 20, I'm sorry, go ahead. That's for the second one.
Yes, keep the
Sorry,
one at a
keep the
time.
one.
Thanks, Chris.
Okay.
Okay, so with that, I'm going to open the public hearing. Yep, that's right. And we'll have basically two public hearings here. The Patel Magali request for a variance. Okay, so that public hearing is open. Would anybody like to comment on this variance request from the public? And this is an opportunity for the public to come forward and offer input on this variance request. So if you have any comments, now would be the time to do that. I'll ask again, would anybody like to make comments on this variance request? And then a third time, would anybody like to make comments on this variance request? Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing. And discussion by the board, or maybe somebody would like to make a motion to approve the variance.
I'd make a motion to approve the Patel variance to the dock length of
It looks like 370.
370.
Based on the squares. The squares aren't labeled, but there's 10 in between the 200 and 300.
I'd go 370.
We have a motion and a second to approve the variance up to 370 feet. Any discussion?
Did we hear any
Meredith?
complaints last year?
Any additional questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, that passes. Okay, do you want to set up the East Shore Dock Association, Chris?
Sure. The second one was for East Shore. They're asking for a 20-foot extension to push out. Last year they did 12. When they did 12, they actually had to take a boat out, so they're asking for an additional 8 feet there. They're well within their 200 feet for their length. I think they're at 170, right? 170 total with the requested variance. So I would propose approving the East Shore Dock Association's variance to 170 feet for their dock.
I'll second that motion since Mark has involvement with this. Okay, so I'll also add that we received a letter from a neighbor or someone in the area that, in my understanding of the letter, was that people, actually it was an email, that canoers, kayakers, paddleboarders, kiteboarders, windsurfers, floating tubers, swimming dogs, etc., enter the lake behind the ESDA's boat motors and next to this particular person's dock. Sometimes these people are very close to engines and props. And it seems the reason that people are doing this is because they like to go around a shorter dock versus a longer dock. And I think you all have that email in your packet. Then the next, and this is just really a wonder, and just for a short discussion maybe, I wonder why this is a variance request and not like an amendment to the approval that we gave previously. And
When it originally came out, there was still ice on the lake, and that's what the board decided to do, is say, we'll give you your 150 and then put out a variance. We would have rather much done it the other way. And then the other thing I'd like to clarify, I won't vote on this, but I'll say, the reason they're coming behind the dock is because 2 years ago, the city took swim ropes and attach them from their beach to our dock. So they used to come in between the two docks, and now they can't unless they go over the swim ropes. It's not a swimming area, but the city kind of put something there for that. So now they come behind. So there's two lots there that ESDA has easement on, and one is 75 feet, and the other one is 25 feet where the ditch is, and that's behind the boat motors. So that's still city property.
So it's not private still, it's still public property there behind it?
Yes.
Okay, is that rope situation, is that annual, or was that a one-time thing, or?
City's done it the last 2 years.
Okay, so, got it. Okay, any further discussion? Oh, no, that was just the setup. Kind of out loud.
Yeah.
Yep, sorry. Okay, so I'm going to open the public hearing for the East Shore Dock Association variance request. This is an opportunity for members of the public to come forward and offer input on this variance request. And would anybody like to take advantage of this public hearing time? I'll ask again, would anybody like to take advantage of this public hearing time for the East Shore Dock Association variance request? And then one last time, would anybody like to come forward and comment on this variance request? Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing. Okay, so now we're back to the board. And would anybody like to make a motion regarding this item?
I'd make a motion to approve the East Shore Dock Association for their dock length of 170 feet for this season.
We have a motion and a second to approve the variance request. Any discussion?
I'll echo your earlier comments, Brian, and just say in the future this shouldn't be a variance, and we just amend the conditional use permit that we had already granted.
And I think that's something that, and Sherry, if you could note this for me, maybe the executive committee can begin that discussion and we can bring something to the board on that. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
How then, if we approve this, how then do we deal with Schrankler's comments? I mean, is there a solution to the problem that they identify here?
Chris, do you have any thoughts?
Suggestion. I think we follow up with Steph. She can fill out a complaint form, get the right documentation in, and then we can follow up and give her guidance.
And just a reminder that we should probably keep that confidential, or
Right.
the name of.
Sorry.
Okay, sorry.
Good point. Very good point.
Okay, sorry, go ahead.
But I think we should just follow the process like we're trying to and get it documented, and then we can follow up and talk to them about, here's what we discussed, here's the problems, probably why. Is there other ways to get the city to help alleviate the problem of docking or launching kayaks where they should? Maybe that's the route we go.
And would LUC want to take up that discussion with this individual?
I can, yeah.
Okay. Okay, we still have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Okay, that passes. Okay, we're on to unfinished business, the 2024 Lake Use Study and Data Summary and Trend Analysis Report. This is a work session with Blue Water Science, and Meredith, I'll let you set this up, please.
Okay, we have Steve McComas from Blue Water Science here with us tonight. We're going to treat this as a working session on the lake use study and the lake quality trends draft reports. Steve is going to make a short presentation with just some highlights for us, and then we're going to allow ample time for board input because it is really important. Board can ask questions, comments, feedback. Sherry and I are going to be taking notes on this feedback, so if you can specify which draft you're talking about, maybe the section or even the page, so we can compile those. The page would be best if you have that, so we can compile this feedback and get it to Steve. And within the next week, if you think of something else, you can email Sherry, and Sherry and I will add that into the feedback we're going to give to Steve at some point. So Sherry, as soon as we send Steve all those final edits, we'll get a final report. The board will accept that report, and then we're going to plan some kind of community presentation at that point. But I'd like to welcome Steve to give us a short presentation on some of the highlights.
Thank you very much. Meredith, and thank you again, Board, for the opportunity to work and produce this study. I think it's somewhat groundbreaking from the standpoint there hasn't been a lake use study done in the metro area in at least 10 years, and I think there's been some changes since the last one. So I'm just going to kind of do some of the highlights, knowing that this is a draft plan and that we are open to comments, suggestions, and edits. So we'll just start right out. First slide here, we'll start very beginning. Oh, not that one. Oh, yeah, that one. Okay, here's that one. This is kind of our outline. These are some of the main components that were in our lake use study, and we combined a trend analysis with it as well. Then, starting at the very beginning, look at this. That's the U.S. Land Survey map from 1847. That's before Minnesota was a state, and the current outline of White Bear Lake. The lake has not changed much in the last 150 years or so. So that's interesting. You can see Manitou Island. You can see a little peninsula coming out of there as well. But the basic shape is still about the same. Well, next, going a little bit more recently, we'll go and talk about the water quality trend analysis. And here we just compiled all our seasonal growing averages for the years that were available. And this doesn't really show up on the screen, this pointer, but if we look at the water quality from the standpoint of Secchi Disk, we have 70 years of Secchi Disk readings. The overall trend is increasing. When that line goes down, that's an increasing water clarity. Now just go from 0 to and decreasing as you go down the scale, rather than increasing going up. Anyway, look at we have an increasing clarity in White Bear Lake over the last 70 years. A significant dip there in the last few years, that was probably due to zebra mussels. When they were peaking, the water was extremely clear, and now as the zebra mussels are starting to kind of die back a little bit, the clarity is still good, but not as good as it was back when the zebra mussels were full throttle. Total phosphorus, a slight decreasing trend over the last 50 years, and chlorophyll, which is a measure for algae, also a slight decreasing trend. So in that case, that's kind of what we would like. Have decreasing chlorophyll concentrations, algae concentrations, and decreasing phosphorus. The next parameter we looked at was chloride. Now here we have an increasing trend in chloride. We started in 54. We have a really nice record, one of the better records in the metro area of chloride concentrations. That's basically salt. And the primary source of salt is from road salting and road salt runoff. Although that's an increasing trend, that's pretty typical for most lakes in the metro area. In fact, a lot of the lakes in Minnesota, because of the use of road salt. But to put this into context, the next slide shows that the impaired status of a lake is at 230 milligrams per liter. And we're down around 50 or so. At the rate that we are increasing, it would take a couple hundred years actually to get to an impaired lake status. Now, Lake Josephine in the watershed district, in the Rice Creek Watershed District, does have an impaired status for chloride. It's one of the few lakes in the metro area that does. But we're in pretty good shape at White Bear Lake, primarily because it's a small watershed and the runoff is mostly diffuse, non-point source runoff. The next slide is showing kind of our lake level trend. This is from our trend analysis, and we took it up to 2024. We've had some ups and downs over the year, and we know that the all-time low was back in 2010 in that era. There's been some other low points. We had a high point. Now, again, the fluctuation is somewhat cyclical there, and we'll see where it goes as time goes on. We'll keep tracking it. Well, to put this in perspective, too, the next slide shows when we were in that low lake period, when we put precipitation and graph that along with the lake levels, it looks like precipitation is probably a significant driver for lake levels. High precipitation, increased lake levels, drought conditions, lake levels go down. Temperature has also been a factor, especially in the 2010 era. We looked at evapotranspiration. That also tracks with these ups and downs in lake levels. Well, over the years, kind of going to the next slide, over the years we've been tracking aquatic plants. And White Bear Lake has an exceptional aquatic plant community, very good high diversity, and a lot of good water quality indicators from our native pond weeds and things like that that are present. However, we have been using herbicides in the lake going back to the 50s. And so we've been tracking those from 1956 to the present. Eurasian milfoil was first spotted in 1988 in White Bear. At that time, it was so new in the state, we were thinking, or the board and others were thinking, if we hit it really hard, and can we maybe contain it and maybe even possibly eradicate it? So that first one of those first blips, that first peak after 1988 was a heavy use of herbicide applications, and then what happened after a couple of years, 3, 4, 5 years, as milfoil continued to spread around the lake, it was pretty obvious that milfoil could not really be eradicated, and we were in a long-term control management phase. The peaks that are coming up in the 2010 era, that is from the low lake levels, and with better sunlight penetration, milfoil really responded. So as lake levels have come up a little bit, the use of herbicides as primarily milfoil treatment has decreased. Prior to milfoil introductions in the 50s, 60s, 70s, that was pretty much for native plant control with residential areas. Also, some of that was, what they used back in the 50s was DDT, or 2,4-D wasn't really available. There was a lot of arsenic being used. That was found to be pretty effective for plants, pretty toxic for everything. Anyway, so that is some of our herbicide use. The next slide shows over the years, at least we've been tracking milfoil in White Bear from 2012 on. All the treatments of milfoil from 2012 through 2023 are there on the map. You can see that it varies from year to year, but milfoil at the same time has been somewhat widespread. This is only heavy growth in treatment areas, not necessarily all the milfoil in the lake. But if milfoil is not a problem, Eurasian milfoil, it acts like a native, you probably don't have to treat it. So another aquatic invasive species that has been found in the lake first came in 2014 is zebra mussels. And last time we did a very comprehensive plant survey in 2023, we measured we observed any zebra mussels on aquatic plants. And here's a distribution map of zebra mussels. They're pretty well distributed around the lake in 2023. We don't have necessarily the abundance, but the abundance is probably going to be declining as we go forward. They will never probably go completely away, but their abundance and eventually their distribution will be somewhat restricted or decline as time goes on. So those have been some of the water quality and aquatic organism indicators with their trend analysis. Now we're going to talk a little bit about some of the boats and structures around the lake. That was part of our lake use study. Here are some boat inventories. By that, meaning that we'd go around the shoreline of White Bear Lake and count all boats on docks and on the shoreline. So when we say shoreline inventory, it's not necessarily dock boats, but all boats found along the riparian, or riparian another word for shoreline area. We can look at that table, and the highlights probably are, if we're looking at some of the big changes, personal watercrafts, PWCs and pontoons have increased dramatically in the last 20 years. Kayaks and paddle boards have made a dramatic increase. They weren't even hardly around back in the 2004-2005 inventory. In fact, at that point we were counting there were more canoes than kayaks. So kayaks have really hit their stride, so to speak, as well as paddle boards. Those have been the biggest areas of increase. What is kind of interesting too is that our rear tiller boats, the boats with a motor in the back and you have to steer it from the back, those boats, those fishing boats have kind of declined, as have sailboats. And we probably don't have to go over all those numbers, but it's in the report. So then those are the riparian or the shoreline inventories. If we look at the boat inventories with the three primary marinas, Commercial Bay, Mataska Park, and White Bear Yacht Club, one of the bigger increases in the types of craft have been pontoons, especially in Commercial Bay. If you look at that pontoon line there, going from 113 pontoons in Commercial Bay in 1999 up to about over 300 in 2024. So that's been one of the watercrafts that have increased in Commercial Bay. Number of sailboats have decreased from Commercial Bay over time. The next slide is showing just combining all the boats that we find on the lake, both from the marinas and from riparian inventories. If we look at the number of crafts, so to speak, we had 1,400 in 1999. We're up to 2,100 in 2024. But of that 2,100, which is an increase from 2008, a lot of that increase is due primarily to kayaks and to paddle boards, which were included as craft, human-powered craft. Well, we also did shoreline structures, which includes things like the docks and lifts. The number of docks on the shoreline, in our shoreline inventory and our counting around the lake, hasn't increased much from 1999 or from 2002, about a 1% increase. Number of docks, by our counting and the way from our methodology, have stayed about the same. Also, the number of boat lifts have increased slightly from 2004 and even 2002, but not dramatically. And then there's some other areas in there. If we look at the number of powered boats, those are boats with motors and sailboats, those number of those craft, and we look at the number of docks, it's the ratio is about two docks or about 2 boats per dock. However, when we add in all craft, which is the human-powered craft, which is kayaks and paddle boards, then we're at about 3.1 boats per dock. There's been a slight increase in the human-powered boats per dock, but not necessarily a significant increase in the powered boats per dock. And again, the report's been pretty dense. There's a lot of things we could delve into, but we will keep going. The next slide is looking at, we were back in the 1999, 2002, 2005, we had folks stationed at the public accesses for 15-hour days for what we were calling peak days and then off-peak days. And that was a day from 6 in the morning till 9 at night. So that's what we used for the first 3 boat launch surveys. In 2024, we knew that the DNR would be out there, or Washington County, or at least there'd be inspectors who were doing the same exact thing as the surveyors back in those earlier studies. So we used DNR data, and it was somewhat comparable when we look at boats per hour that are launched. Some of the things that we did find is that the peak launching rates are from about noon to mid-afternoon, which is probably not completely unexpected for peak days. Off-peak days, which were weekdays, we had boats being launched more in the evening, 3 o'clock to about 6. But if we look at the number of boats launched per hour from the last few surveys, we're finding that there's been a decrease in boats that have been launched per hour from the public accesses and from Commercial Bay. Commercial Bay about, and the off-peak stayed a little bit the same, except for sure Commercial Bay, not necessarily the other accesses. Well, the next slide is showing boat density in the lakes. Boat density, I better get going here a little bit quick. Boat density on the lakes. The DNR uses 20 acres per boat as being kind of a nice number for what is crowded and what's not crowded. So if you have 25 acres per boat, that would be uncrowded. If you had 15 acres per boat, then things are a little bit more crowded. Well, what we're finding on average that we're right at about, well, in 2024, we're at 18 acres per boat. So that's right just on the crowded edge, but that's primarily due, because that's an average, that's primarily from the peak times of mid-afternoon on peak days. Also, just a little note, it appears that boat density is decreasing slightly from 1999 through 2024. We also did some lake resident questionnaires. We sent out, and including the Conservation District was very good, Meredith and Mark, for getting these questionnaires ordered, put together. We got QR codes that were helpful. We had a pretty good return. We had over 100 responses. One of the questions that was asked is your primary activities. These are from lake residents. The primary activity would appear to be what we just kind of characterize as pleasure boating, and that is kind of cruising with around the lake, either pontoons or even with kayaks and things along those lines. So that is one of the primary activities used by lake residents, and that's been fairly consistent, or since 2005 anyway. And in 1999, it was a little bit more swimming and fishing. We're a little bit higher from the fishing was. When we combine some fishing aspects along with other things, water skiing has been water skiing or wakeboarding. A little bit different questions, but cumulatively they're about the same as well in terms of primary activities. The next slide is an important slide. We asked the lake residents, what is your perception of the lake? Is it crowded or not? And if it is, what is the type of watercraft causing the congestion or disturbance? And in 2005, 74% of respondents said yes, sometimes the lake is crowded. And in 2024, it was 81%, a slight increase. And the main craft that caused some problems would be jet skis, the person watercraft, and wake boats. Well, in summary, which is the next slide, we'll leave it there, but I think that the last bullet is something to consider. Over the last 25 years, public access parking spaces have stayed the same. We haven't increased the public access parking, and also the shoreline powered craft numbers have been about the same. So lake boat density has not necessarily increased. In fact, might have even decreased slightly. However, engine horsepower, although not quantified, certainly does seem to have increased in the last 20 years. So that's an overview of the lake use study and the trend analysis. Are there other questions?
Okay, and I'll just remind everybody that, per what Meredith said, if you have comments on these, what we're trying to do is create one single document that we can mark up, send to Steve and his crew, so that they can, consider our comments, update as appropriate, that kind of thing. So if you have those, get those to Sherry or Meredith. But at the moment, if there are any questions that anybody has regarding these drafts, you raise them now. And does anybody have any questions? Okay, well, I'll start. So let's see. So I'll just start with the lake use study. Just a general question. Did anything in the data stand out or surprise you?
So one of the surprising findings I thought were the dramatic increase in kayaks and in paddle boards, which were, recreational use, active use. The trend has been a lot of lakes that you get more passive use, where you just are out looking, and a lot of the aesthetics are important. But in White Bear, the surge in kayaks and paddle boards indicates a big increase in recreational use of those things that are also probably good for exercise too.
Okay, and then table 9. I'm getting there. I should have written that down. Table 9's on page 14, and I'm still on Lakeview study. So there are some numbers, so there are the numbers, and I'll just look at, because it's the first one, South Bay, May 27, 2024, that cell, from 7:30 to 9. So there's the number 7, and then in parentheses, there's the number 1. And you explained that the numbers in parentheses are represent active towed boats, tubers, water skiers, wakeboarders.
Okay.
So is that part of the total of 7?
Yes.
Okay,
it
so
is.
so the numbers in parentheses are incorporated or are included in that
Yes.
overall number. Okay, thank you. And then page 15 mentions good weather conditions up at the top. And how did you define good weather conditions for the report?
Good point. Low wind and no precipitation were primarily the main indicators. Temperature was a factor, but there weren't very many days where it was just dramatically too cold to recreate. So it was primarily wind, which would create boat chop and tough conditions, and rain.
Okay. And then table 13 on page 17. So we mentioned up at the top there, riparian includes all non-commercial craft. And and this is me being ignorant, right? What do we mean by non-commercial craft here?
Probably like service boats that would be going out into, to put in docks and lifts and things like that.
Okay.
And I'm not sure, I don't have that right in front of me, possibly, that's primarily at that, sheriff's boats. Sometimes there's occasionally a sheriff boat or two that were parked. We didn't include those.
Okay. And then on that same table, so it goes on, which means individual lakeshore owners and multiple docks. And what do we mean by multiple docks there?
So, some of the associations had more than one tongue of a dock coming out. And so we counted all, we didn't count that as a commercial marina, but as a housing or as an association, we did count that as probably only counted a dock coming out from shore, and then even though it might have split, that'd be like one dock.
Okay. Okay, and then, so page 19, one of the things that's mentioned is that the 2024 number of launches may be undercounting, and because in the past, maybe there have been the DNR or whoever staffing those more often or continuously, and what is that, the past situation?
That's going to be revised. What happened is that by undercounting, originally we were using, a 1.5 hour time period. We had 10 1.5 hour time periods. If we trying to compare DNR inspections to that set time period, wasn't quite directly relatable because DNR sometimes might only be out there for a half hour or an hour. So a better way to correlate that would be launches per hour. And so when we did that, I think we got better numbers because we can do that for the previous studies and then for the 2024 study. So launches per hour is probably better, and we're still finding fewer launches per hour in 2024 compared to previous years.
Okay, and then
What was that page number again?
19. And then page 30. Well, I'll bring it up just quickly. So in the, one of the things that stood out to me in the surveys, the homeowner surveys and lake user surveys, was the water milfoil. And, it's terrible, and blah, and I respect those comments. Do you think there's anything that we could or should be doing to try to minimize milfoil even more?
Here's what I'm thinking, is a lot of those observations were for plants in general. And not only milfoil, but there are things that look a lot like milfoil or that are problem growing. Some of our native plants in the last few years, with lower lake levels especially, have generated nuisance conditions. And they'll put up a seed stock, and I've noticed from around the surveys we're doing with milfoil, some of these white stem pondweeds, some of these native pondweeds are hitting the surface, putting out seed stalks very similar to what Eurasian milfoil could put out as well. So a lot of the milfoil, because we've been pretty good to delineate our nuisance milfoil, and there is probably a lot more acres of nuisance, or there's other acres of nuisance native plants as well. But those are not milfoil plants.
Yeah.
So milfoil seems to be somewhat stable. It just kind of pops up in different parts of the lake in different years. But the native plants, they'll have their ups and downs as well. And I think a lot of times those can be kind of combined.
Yeah, that seems reasonable. Okay, can I keep going? Okay, the data, now I'm on to the data summary and trend analysis. So page 3, and you know, I understand that there are these traditional lake quality parameters like Secchi disk and phosphorus and chlorophyll A. And it seems like we should also mention chloride there. But what do you think about that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, chloride was a standalone parameter, and it should be in the water quality area.
Okay.
And so I can certainly make some changes along those lines. But the phosphorus, clarity, and chlorophyll are what they call trophic indicators. Those are what they use for impaired lakes based on water quality for biological life, basically. Those are all interconnected. Whereas chloride is a little bit different animal from the standpoint that it is not biologically active, but it can impair lakes and can in fact impact some aquatic life at those high levels. So that's why we're tracking chlorides a little bit differently and a little bit separately.
And I apologize, I'm going to put you on the spot here. Two-part question. Is it reasonable to assume that the chloride levels in the lake will never go down from what we're seeing there, that the best case is that we get the slow progression or a plateau? And then the second part of that is, so I understand the state impairment level of 230 milligrams per liter, but it seems like the chloride at that level, if chloride climbs to 230, okay, boom, now we start seeing impairments. But it seems reasonable to me that there are probably impairments that are happening along the way. And do you have an idea of where things start getting hindered, let's say, instead of impaired, by chloride levels, and at what chloride level that would be?
That's a good question. First one is that will chloride levels ever go down? It's possible, because there's been such a big push by the state to look at salt, road salt management, trying to reduce road salt runoff. Salt, unfortunately, doesn't precipitate, isn't taken up biologically or anything else. So the only way it can go down is through dilution. That's rainfall and everything else, because it does not settle out, and it's always there. But good road salt management could also reverse that trend, possibly. I mean, that's how that trend has kind of increased. More impervious surface, more roads, more salt. So if we were to start reducing the amount of salt, theoretically, the salt concentration could go down. In terms of impairment, the more subtle or hard to differentiate impacts, it could occur. But here's the thing. We're talking about impairments. When we're up to 230, that's not even hard. That's not even close to saltwater or brackish conditions. A lot of our freshwater organisms, both plants and fish and even the invertebrates, are fairly tolerant of salt conditions. Not brackish, but some elevated salt. At some point, we get 230 is kind of brackish water. I mean, you can taste it then, and that's when the freshwater fauna starts having impact. But they have a pretty wide tolerance for salt concentrations. But we don't have a lot of research on the more subtle, indirect impacts of that intermediate salt concentration.
Okay, and I'm nearing the end here. Page 7, on this, the lake level data,
Yeah.
it seems like it would be good for us to note the period when wells were being used to supplement the lake levels, and I think it'd be good if we could kind of indicate that in the report in some way.
I'll put that in there, yes, we have that information.
Okay, and then, page 29, and again, this is just me being ignorant here. So I see these, this is the fish survey results, and I see, just as an example, black bullhead on 7/21/75 was 0.3. And I think, well, there can't be 0.3 of a fish. So what do these decimal point numbers mean?
Good point. We'll be able to describe that a little bit better. It's fish per net. It's catch per unit effort. So that's how many bullheads were caught per net. And a lot of times they'll have 10 nets set. And if they only catch 2 bullheads out of 10 nets, then it's a 0.2 fish.
Oh, got it.
0.2 bullheads per net. So it's a catch per unit effort, and those are trap nets or gill nets. And we can flesh that out better.
Okay, and then, and this is one that came up from your presentation. Do you think that zebra mussels impact the chlorophyll numbers?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they do. But subtly, and not in a sustained manner, so to speak. What they're doing is they're certainly changing some of the algae composition in the lake, because they're filtering out those single-celled algae, and then they digest some of it, and they're depositing the waste products on the bottom. So a lot of our algae now is on the bottom. I mean, that's where the nutrients are, and so we're getting some bottom-growing algae. And I don't have that up there right now, but even though chlorophyll has decreased over the last few years, and so has phosphorus and things, it hasn't been a dramatic decrease. The clarity was certainly impacted, but not as much as chlorophyll. But chlorophyll is a surrogate for algae, because the algae, we analyze water sample for chlorophyll, and that's where the algae all have chlorophyll.
Okay, that's it for me. But I should have started by saying thanks for all your efforts and for your expertise. I know the board really appreciates it.
Well, I'd like to say something too. Without the help of Meredith and Mark, the report would have been a lot worse. They did a heck of a job to make a lot of this stuff more understandable and pointed out some very, very good things, and so I appreciated that too.
Okay. Does anybody else have any comments, questions for Steve at the moment? Chris?
One thing on top of what you were talking about, chlorophyll, like, it'd be interesting to see, as you're going, even for phosphorus and some of it, because it doesn't seem like we have an unhealthy lake by any means.
Right.
But like some of the numbers, I don't know where bad begins, right? Like if you double,
Yeah, and I'll make sure that we can flesh that out a little bit better, because on that diagram, I didn't point it out, but we had the impaired lake concentration status.
Yeah.
And that was in like that water quality slide,
Okay.
Sherry. And we are unimpaired in all those main factors.
Right.
In fact, the lake is very healthy and relatively unimpaired from a water quality standpoint and even from a chloride standpoint. So for example, there, that triple, the slides.
Hey, Steve, can I just ask a favor? If you'll talk into the mic, that'd be great. Thanks.
For example, there, see that line in the top? That is the impaired lake concentration, and we're way below that for all 3 parameters. So what we call an ecoregion value, and so we're in good shape from that standpoint.
And then I had one more. The launching in Commercial Bay. What were those counts from? Is that from the VFW and the one by Admiral Dees, or both of those?
All 3.
There's a third?
Yeah. We looked at the VFW, I don't have right.
Ramsey County. You were saying the 3 you looked at were Ramsey County, Petoskey, and then the one at VFW. No.
I think I can answer your question.
Okay.
Yeah.
The launches from Commercial Bay was any boat exiting the marinas from Commercial Bay.
So not a new boat coming on the lake. This is just leaving the marina.
No trailers involved.
So that was
leaving
kind of
the
like,
slips.
I've never seen a boat launch in Commercial Bay for years. Like by tallies.
Leaving slips.
This is leaving.
Yes.
So a little bit different there.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, anybody else at the moment? Sherry or
I
Susan?
have just a strange question. The chloride that is getting into the lake, which appears to be increasing on, decade over decade, is there any way to filter it out, filter the water before it gets to the lake?
That's one of the few, it's a non-conservative element, meaning that it doesn't absorb anything, it does not take it up biologically, it is just in the water column, and right now at this point we would need reverse osmosis.
Okay.
Which would be very expensive. It would be basically desalinating like ocean water, and that's through microfibers and a very, very intensive and expensive process. So we're better to try to reduce the amount of salt than trying to remove it as it runs over land into a lake. Good question.
Okay, anyone else? Okay. All right. Well, Meredith, do you have anything else to say?
Yeah, I'll mention that Sherry and I'll send comments to Sherry in the next week. If you think of anything else you'd like sent to Steve, and we'll be compiling them.
Okay, thank you, Steve.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Steve.
Okay. Moving on. Sorry, I had a report. So we're moving on to reports and action items. The executive committee is, I'll take that report, and I had some minutes that I'd taken, but I left them at home. So things we talked about, which are all going to come up, they're all appeared or will appear or are on the agenda. The bank change items that Mike's going to be talking about in a little bit. The bylaw changes. Oh no, not that one. The permit application docs, which the LUC is taking the lead on. Permanent dock structures. There was a report of one, I think, that was maybe occurring that Alan was going to look into. And then the AIS survey and treatment, we talked about that, and then the lake use study. And those were the highlights of our meeting. Any questions about any of those items? And again, most of these are on the agenda tonight. Okay, moving on, Lake Quality Committee, Mike.
Lake level today, this afternoon, 922.77. Last month it was 922.6. Last year it was 922.37. But today it was 922.77. Lake temperature today is 52 degrees. Last month it was 45 degrees. Last year it was 65 degrees. So there's quite a difference there. But it was warm for a while, but it was cold at night, and then this cold rain really takes it down. Now we have a AIS monitoring and treatment plan. It's a work in progress. It's in your package of information. Hopefully you read through it and might have some questions or additions to it. As we go through the summer, we will get it all tightened up so that it will be something that we can work from, that anybody could look at and understand. And Meredith is working on some of that too. I don't know if you have any comments at this time. No? Okay. But since it's in the packet, I assume you all read it. Do you have anybody have any questions?
You know, the one thing I'll mention about this AIS prevention, surveillance, and treatment plan is it kind of started out small like this, and it's really grown to include more, and I think that's good, but it's just taking a while to get it to the finish line, or at least to get it to a point where we can call it done for now.
Okay. So if you have any ideas, let me know, or let Sherry know, or any questions on any of it. Next is the lake management bid, and this is for the treatment of Eurasian water milfoil. That was a handout tonight, so we'll go through it. We have options of liquid M24D at $598 an acre, and Triclopure at $606 an acre, so they're almost the same. We've used them both, had good results. Quite often I use, well, most of the time I try to use, I'll put half the lake in one and half the lake in the other, and then the following year, reverse it, so that, trying to fake that milfoil out. We've had good control, and we want to continue doing it. So what I want to do tonight, I don't have acreage, so I can't give you a dollar figure, but we want to approve the bids and the use of lake management. So I make a motion that we use lake management and their bid for the treatment of Eurasian water milfoil for this coming summer.
Second.
And a second to approve the lake management bid. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, that passes.
Okay, Starry Stoneward, that's something that we've been working on, and we have a prevention scheme in place that was in the bid that Blue Water Science gave us, where they will go out each month over 4 months and search for and identify at the boat launches for Starry Stoneward. If found, they will map it, put it on an electronic notebook, and we will be able to go to the applicator and have it treated. We have a bid for Starry Stonewort, which is also in the handout things. It's on the other side of the lake management Eurasian water milfoil bid. And the copper sulfate is the product you use. It's any copper, well, not any bit. It needs to be a copper base to have the best effect, and they recommend copper sulfate at $3.26 an acre. So I would like to have that bid approved, and I would also like to have funds to treat it if found, permission to treat it, and funds to treat it. So that's three things. First of all, if we do find Starry Stonewort, I want permission to treat it immediately. I want to approve Lake Management to be the company that will treat it. And I would like to set aside $5,000, which is really a lot because at $3.26 an acre, and if we find it at a boat launch, it's less than an acre at each boat launch, but we don't know. So I would like to go up to $5,000 for treatment. So this is my motion.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. And are there any questions about the motion?
We think $5,000 will be enough for those boat launches, or we just come back if it was bigger, I take it?
Well, could be any number. It's not,
It's a start. I'll
We
just
might
leave it
not,
at that.
we
It's a
might
start.
not,
That's good.
If you get to 4,000, let us know.
I think what we want is we want to not be hindered in immediate treatment. And the 5,000, like Mike said, it's a number.
Yeah.
Hopefully we wouldn't get that much because that means we have a lot of Starry Stonewort that we're treating.
I could amend it to say $5,000 and any funds that are available in the Eurasian water milfoil budgeted of $27,000.
I'm okay with that.
I would just start with 5. And
Yeah, are you? Yeah, I think that. Well, okay. So have you officially amended the motion?
Yeah.
Okay. So, yep. Okay, so that's the motion. And the amended motion is $5,000 plus anything that's remaining in the Eurasian water milfoil treatment budget. Any discussion?
Do you want a second?
Yeah, Mark.
I seconded and then approved the,
Okay, any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, that passes.
Okay, last thing I added to the agenda was the swimmer's itch letter, which goes out this time each year to the communities who have public beaches, and we pay for we pay for one treatment of the swimming area only. We'll have to change the letter to say the swimming area only. And I would like to make a motion that we send that letter out. We have budgeted $1,000, and it's been right around between $700 and $900 each year. So motion that we send out the swimmer's itch letter to the communities pay for the first treatment at their public beaches, swimming beaches.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second to send the letter to the cities regarding swimmer's itch. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, that passes.
That's it.
Any questions for Mike? Okay, moving on to Lake Utilization Committee. Mark?
First one is the fireworks, and we approved it at the LUC, and I so move. Oh, also, I'd like to say we should waive the fee because it enhances the public's appreciation of the lake.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the application for the fireworks, waiving the fee. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That passes.
The next one is Brian and Rachel Bonin. They want to basically do the same thing we approved the city to do regarding the dog park off Lake Avenue. And there were 4 people at the LUC, and the vote was split 2-2. So if you want to, where do you want to go from there?
Okay, well, rather than ask for a motion, maybe we can just have some discussion?
Yeah.
Okay. One of you want to take and just kind of lay out?
I will add this, that two of the decisions were, or 2 of the thoughts were, one, if you're going to let the city do it, then you kind of have to let the private owners who are, adjacent or close by, who's having the same problem, do it. Or 2, you take the fence away from the city and say no to both.
So those are 2 options that were discussed at the LUC?
That's what were discussed, suggestions.
Okay. Well, I'll just start. I look at this situation, and I think that it's fundamentally different to me anyway, because the city has established a dog beach there, or dog park. That's outside of what this board deals with, but that it does exist there. And they requested a fence to try to mitigate dogs moving from the beach, the dog park, we'll call it dog park, the dog park area to their swimming area, which is adjacent to it. But both of the properties there belong to the city. So to me, that seems a little different than the situation or the request that's in front of us, or the application that's in front of us. Another thing, and I was at the LUC, so I heard the discussion, and if it seems to me that if the fence and the buoys that the city has installed aren't performing the way that they're intended to perform, which is to, keep the dogs on one side versus traveling to the other side, that's an issue really with the city, that they should adjust their fence in some way to do a better job, versus us, and then the last thing I'll say, and I don't doubt that, the dogs may occasionally, or however frequent, make their way along there. To me, there's a little bit of dog ownership responsibility in that. But they would swim or jump over the buoys, then they would get past the next dock, and then they would get over past another parcel of property, and then they would get to the area where the fence is requested. And I just wonder if a dog is, that out of control, if even another fence would really solve that individual problem. That's one thing I wonder. So what do other people think? Chris?
2 things. One, we set the precedent that we're allowing fences on the lake. That was voted on before. So in my stance, I think of any other deterrent, if the city's not doing their job, taking care of the dogs, taking care of their fences, or moving it, or doing what's needed because it's a problem from day one, and somebody needs to put something up to help protect their property, if it's a fence or buoys, again, another deterrent for this, I think they should have a right to do that, especially for the precedent that we set here as a board saying we approved it, right? And then I just look at it as, if it could go the other way, where I don't think there should be any fences. I truly believe that. But if we approve the one, I do believe the other owner should have that. If there's that big of a problem with dogs where they have evidence, they show that the dogs are coming over, And you've seen it, if you build enough fences, yeah, it's probably going to be a big enough a deterrent.
Anybody else have any thoughts on this item? Meredith?
I have a question on this one. Were the neighbors notified of this request? They were, okay. Did we get any feedback from? No. Okay. And I hear your point, Chris, on if one person, if someone gets something, another person should get it too. But this one's a little bit different for me because it's on the lot line, and the other one wasn't separating. It was just separating the city property from the city property. This one's on the lot line, so we have traditionally not allowed things to be right on the lot line. We've enforced at least 5 feet off the lot line so that the neighbor can access and have egress easier, and so the structures weren't so packed on the lot line. So that's my concern here, that we have not allowed things to be exactly on the lot line. And also we don't know what the lot line is going into the lake. We've dealt with this issue in Commercial Bay before, that it might not be straight along the property line. It might be in so that line of buoys, we'd have to look at exactly where it would be placed.
Can I ask Chris a follow up on that? So if it was moved over 5 feet and the line was figured out, what's your opinion on that?
I think that might fit into our rules at that point.
Now, I mean, swimming areas always have some kind of buoys, that are used as a part of the swimming area. And what we've already approved is what the city is doing in terms of demarcating their swimming areas for dogs and non-dogs. And it really, is really a responsibility of the swimming area owner to define that, not the neighbors. And besides the fact that if the fence and buoys that are already there aren't containing the dogs, adding more isn't going to work either. I mean, the people who are against the dog beach they're doing whatever they can to stop it, and I don't think this is going to do it. So because really the city should be responsible for defining their own swimming areas, as all swimming areas are, and not the neighbors.
So,
Go ahead, Mark.
so maybe what I'm hearing is maybe the city should do what they do for public swim beaches and just buoy out the whole area for their ADUA.
I mean, that would be one option for the city, that would be up to the
And
city.
then private homeowners don't have to worry about something the city's not taking care of.
Well, and I'll get you, Chris. I think the city should be responsible for maintaining the fence they have, and if it's not effectively performing, they should adjust it so that it effectively performs in some way.
We got to remember what we voted on. The first one for the city was we felt it was going to add value. It was going to be a safety deterrent, right? So now we're saying if we have 2 of them, it doesn't really make a difference. It doesn't make sense. We're assuming that that's the case, but the first time when we voted on it, this whole entire board voted on it as this is a safety deterrent. This will work, right? Even after the city put it in without a permit and didn't tell us about it, on top of it. So I look at that where, to say the second one won't work, we said the first one was going to work, and then if we don't think any of them are going to work, then they should all go.
Yeah, and I appreciate that point. I do think, though, that there's a difference between this fence and buoys being 100% effective and being maybe 98% effective. It seems like at least some portion of the dogs must be being contained by this fence. I would assume that. I mean, that's an assumption.
Sure, let's assume it's doing 30%. Don't you think it would go up if you had 2?
Well, what if it's doing 98%?
Then maybe I get to 100% for Brian and his lot. I'm just saying, like, 2 of them seems like it would make a difference, right? Now, I'm not for it, but to say that just one and another's not going to make a difference, I have a hard time believing that, especially when this whole entire board believed that this deterrent, what the city was doing was correct, and everybody voted yes on it, except myself.
On the application. Mark?
So I'm generally opposed to fences, similar to Chris. I think in this case, I approved an exception for this purpose. I'm strongly opposed to this permit application. I think if the first one's not working, I don't think approving a second one improves the situation for the out-of-control dogs that Brian described. I think we take it up with the city, and if that is an ineffective barrier, they want to have a barrier, we generally approve a barrier. They should fix it and make it work. I think allowing additional fences outside of this exception is, I'm against that. I think that sets up an opportunity for fences between neighbors for all sorts of reasons, and we should oppose that, in my opinion.
Okay, any other general discussion? Chris?
I just really have a hard problem with giving the city the ability to do this and nobody else, right? That is not fair, especially when they put it in before without a permit. We should have never even allowed them to put it in when they first came in, and they had it in without even asking for it, right? And we did it on less material. We didn't even know what they were putting in the lake, and we still voted yes on it. So my opinion is, like, fine if we go back to the city, but I think we have to go back to the city and tell them remove what they have. If it comes down to that, I'd rather have a stance where it's like, oh, will you work with the city? They don't work with us. We've seen it. They don't work with the VFW. They don't work with the Commercial Bay people. They're our biggest thorn with what we deal with in Commercial Bay, right? If we go back to them, I think there has to be like, here, you do not get a pass on this. It's like, if we're not going to do one here, we're not going to do it there. And I think we got to start standing up for this lake on it for sure.
Okay, Mark?
I'd say the rationale for removing it would be complaints that it's ineffective, and we take away the permit for an ineffective use. And Scott's idea, I think, is a good one, where if it's a swim area, it could be traditionally marketed as a swim area, as there are several others on the lake.
Okay.
And then again, Chris, ask, like, so then what should homeowners do, like, in this situation? Like, what would you guys' be opinion if they have dogs going in their yards? We don't have things to protect the residents from these dogs going in their yards through our waterways. What should we do? Because that's
I have some suggestions. I mean, one is you could always call animal control and complain. I think also the city, it's the city's dog park area, and so you can call the city and complain. And I do think that governmental units listen to complaints, and the more complaints, the more they listen. That's my general opinion. So I think, that's another action that could be taken. I think also a request of the city to have some greater extent of monitoring of the dog beach area or dog park area during heavy use times. And I know that wouldn't be 24/7. But if there are identified heavy use times, then, maybe a citizen could make a request that the city provide someone down there to kind of enforce the rules. So I think there are some things that can be done to address the situation where the dogs are not doing what we hope the dogs would do.
Yeah.
Scott?
I think we have to be careful there, because if you read the local paper about what a big deal this dog park is and what a big issue has come up multiple times before the city council, and that's not our job. We need to stay clear of the dog beach issue. We don't want to be dragged into it. We're only about approving structures that delimit, beach areas.
we're dragged into it as soon as we approved that fence the last time. We're part of it because us as a board made a decision to put that fence there and be part of the, the rationale for the city, and that we're part of it. We're already pulled into it.
Yeah, well, I think, and I would I'd push back just a little bit, that, the board looked at the fence as being an opportunity to control dogs passing from this side to this side. And without a fence, well, there is no control. And with the fence, at least you have some potential for control. Now, is it 100% effective? No. But is adding more fences going to make it better? I don't know. I mean, how many fences do you add? I guess. I don't know. Okay, so any additional discussion, and then...
I would say to that if one kind of works, then two would work better. One's theoretically not working.
I just add that I think the approval was based on ostensibly an after-the-fact request by the city to mitigate the effects of the dog park. And because it is a public park, that was the exception. It wasn't private property, right? And so to the extent that that's true, I would just caution against taking it back because one person has come in and said it's not working. The board can report back and say that you're getting complaints and requests to have private fences, right? And that's basically putting them on notice. But I strongly suggest not revoking theirs just because you're not giving private property owners the same permission, because at that point, then the city gets to say, we tried to do what we could to contain the dogs at this dog park on a beach, which was their idea, right? But if you revoke that permission and that little bit of mitigation, you own any problems that happen in the lake. I'm just putting that out there, and I don't think that's a good idea.
Right, but people have been coming in for 4 or 5 months complaining about the same topic. We had 10 people in the audience talk about this stupid dog park, right?
I'm just a lawyer.
I'm just
out there, so
I'm giving you what we've seen over the past 4 or 5 months, right?
I don't want you to own the lack of mitigation as a board by saying
I can
it
tell
looks like
you
it's
what we're
not
seeing
working.
from the city. They're giving the big bird to everybody, saying we're not going to do anything with it, right? So in my eyes, if we're the ones accountable for the water, putting structures in the water, we should have a say in what goes there, right? And removal, right? I don't think it's fair for the city to get, especially I hear from the representatives of even White Bear where it's almost like it's all right for them to do that, and it just feels really icky, and the optics on it feel like it's not right.
Ultimately, I agree with you, but putting fences on the lake is a bad idea generally. The
I
only
agree.
exception here is it's a
But this
public
board voted on it. This board voted on it. I said you were going to set the precedent.
Okay, and we've been going around on that issue here.
Yeah.
Okay, so any other discussion? Otherwise, I'll make a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Diane?
Are there any number of buoys listed on the permit? How many buoys?
The application. It's the application, if I remember right, will extend as far out as Dog Beach buoys unless greater length needed.
But how many buoys?
I don't think there's a definition of that. Yeah, I'm not inclined to do that.
It's like a buoy rope.
Swim rope.
It's like, they're connected together, so counting them as individual buoys would be, maybe you could do it, but it wouldn't make sense. It's like a rope that's a buoy.
Yeah, continuous. Okay, Chris, would you like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the Bonin fence and buoy structure, and I'd like to have the White Bear representatives abstain from the vote. So we have fairness, and there's no partnership with the city or whatever you want to call it. I just like to see the White Bear folks stay out of this one.
Okay, we have a motion.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? I'll start by saying, I don't think it's reasonable, just because it's in the city of White Bear Lake, to ask members to abstain, because then, we would be asking Matamidi members to abstain on Matamidi issues and Birchwood and White Bear Township. So I don't think that's reasonable. But any discussion on the motion? Okay, I'll call it. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Can we have a hand?
Yep, okay, so let's do that again. Raise your hand. All those in favor of the motion, raise your hand. 4. All those opposed, raise your hand. 6. Okay, the motion fails. Okay, moving.
Next is the 2026 VFW post 1782 marina expansion. Basically, all they're asking is to go out 300 feet, just like all the other commercial marinas are. The LUC voted yes unanimously, and I so move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the extended length for the VFW dock. Any discussion? And this is for the 2026 operating season?
Correct.
Okay, Mike?
On the application, I can't put my finger on it now, but on the drawings, one drawing shows the dock is 300 feet long, and it has just a small extension. Then another drawing shows a longer extension with the ordinary high water mark and the same line that says 300 feet. Which one is right?
It would be 300 feet from the OHWL. So that the document that we put into that permit that's currently there with the new dock format, that's what it will be. But we'll measure off the OHWL. It will be 300 feet from there.
Okay, because there's two drawings, and I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, we tried to clean up. We're trying to get the, more of the surveyed look one. And the one that's in the permit is the one that we'll use.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, so that passes. Okay, any questions for Mark? Mike?
Back to the dog park. Your suggestion, Mark, of buoying
Yeah.
area
Regular swim beach.
has merit.
Thank you.
So,
I've seen someone say to me all day.
Might be a consideration in the future. Because it's shallow there. They can go out quite a ways with the buoys, and it doesn't inhibit boats coming in at all.
Yeah, go out 200 feet.
Sure. It's 50, I'll go 50 by 50 that the DNR rules state, right?
Yeah.
I'm not going to go bigger than that.
Yeah.
okay, well, that's not a matter in front of the board right now, but
Just thought
thanks
I'd
for the
mention.
suggestion. Okay, so do you want to let the city know that we received an application for a fence and information that their existing fence was not performing, as well as at least one citizen would like, and would they consider putting up swim buoys in accordance with the DNR regulations
Completely contained.
containing the swim area? Not the dog beach, are we talking?
It like a swim area.
Yeah, and is that for the dog beach area, or for the swim area, or for both?
I have
Just the
no
dog-
idea what we're
just the
trying to
dog beach
accomplish.
area.
What's that?
Just the dog beach area.
Dog beach area?
What are we trying to accomplish with this? Like,
They're just like, what?
I recommend the message to the city be just simpler.
Yep.
We've received a request that indicates the permitted fence is not working. And we denied that request for an additional fence on private property. And that hopefully can open up a dialogue with the city from there.
Okay. Everybody okay with that? With that message being sent to the city?
It's just an FYI.
Yep. Okay, moving on, Lake Education Committee, Scott?
Yeah, we have submitted material for the Laker, the first thing. And second thing is we have a lake cleanup scheduled for June 28th, which will be part of Manitou Days, an official event. We have not gotten any response from Boy Scout groups about actually organizing it. So chances are it won't be that big of a deal, but the publicity of having a part of Manitou Days, I think, is a very good public awareness. So we will proceed with that. And finally, we've been working on the idea of putting some signage on the 2 or 3, I guess, boat launches. So we have, Alan went to the cities and asked, well, would you like to have signs for Star Stonewort, which would have an identification picture and a QR code? Not a whole lot more. And I think their initial response was, yeah. Then Alan's going back to see, well, what kind of size and format they want. Yes?
And Scott, do you want me to fill in? I did get a response back from our sergeant who you met, Mike, and so the selection was vertical. And from there was no preference in terms of the size. So I would make it visible, obviously, but not huge.
Okay.
You know, something on that board. I mean, this is going to stand out, A, because it's vertical, and B, because it's new. So probably 11, 14, 8 by 10, something like that.
Yeah.
But the choice was vertical.
Size of what we've used for other things. Anything from the city?
Nothing yet. I would suspect with the boat launch that you really want to hit that one, though, the county one.
Okay. I guess in that case, I would just like approval to make signs as needed. I mean, it's not going to be many. I don't know Mike, how much did that bay sign?
Oh, Saint Germain? It was like $125.
Yeah, I was.
But yours would be
figuring
more
that,
entailed. It might be twice that.
Yeah.
You go to the advanced
Well, it'd
sign?
be smaller, probably.
Yeah.
But, okay.
Who do you have make them?
Yeah, if we had 3,
Who do you have make those signs, or who are you thinking about would make the signs?
we can either go, we would have them made, just like the St. Germain and the other signs that we've had. We could either go through the DOT shop or through the people that did
I
Mike's
used
sign.
Advanced Sign in Lake Owasso, who does make the state signs.
Yeah. Well, we would
You just
have
go
to
directly
figure
to
it
them.
out. So if we had a maximum of 3 signs, if the city wanted one at the VFW, that would be 3 times, no more than 125. So that would be
375.
375 maximum. I don't think we will have to see.
And Mike, are you covering this are you requesting funds for this in the
Well,
treasurer's report or no?
there's sufficient money in the education because it's information, but I would certainly use, whatever you need, Scott,
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's say it's from the education fund. So let's say, so I make a motion that we allow up to $375 to make Star Stonewort signs.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve up to $375. Can I offer a friendly amendment? Can we bump that up to $500 just to give a little leeway? Would that be acceptable?
Sure.
I agree with that.
Okay.
Accept that.
So the motion and the second, as amended, is up to $500 to produce up to 3 Starry Stonewort awareness signs. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, so that passes. Anything else from you on that, Scott, or?
No, then.
On to Meredith.
Social media.
Okay, this month I have lake level and temperature, Starry Stonewort. It's going to link back to our Laker article, and we have a new webpage on it that's going to be up sometime this week, likely. I'm going to do something more on the Laker content on water appropriation from White Bear and summer rules reminders. There's a new date for that shoreline workshop. If anyone wants to attend, it's now Monday, June 9th at Lions Park. It was rained out this evening. which is a good deal for us because it would be a nice one to attend. I'm going to put something up on the Manitou Days. Please join us on June 28th for the cleanup. And then I didn't get the plastics thing up yet, Mark, because I had a full month of content last month, but I will get it up this month. And anything else anyone wants me to put up, just email me.
Okay, any questions for Scott or Meredith? Okay, moving on. Treasurer's report, Mike?
Treasurer's report, that was handed out tonight. I hope you've had a chance to look at some of it. You'll see North Star Bank disbursements, and you'll see down at the bottom U.S. Bank disbursements. The U.S. Bank has since been closed and melded into the North Star Bank, so next month there'll just be the North Star Bank disbursements. But I need to make a motion to get all these approved. So my first motion will be to approve the North Star disbursements, the debit of $10, which was a service charge we weren't supposed to get, and that'll be credited back. Checks number 2520 through 2527, and the U.S. Bank disbursements, credit card purchases 2025-8 and 2025-9.
Second. Mike, what's the deluxe check 331?
Yeah, we had to buy checks for the North Star Bank.
Okay. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Any further discussion, I should say? Okay, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Okay, that passes.
Okay, next thing is I've talked about the 4M fund and probably bored you to death about it. Now it gets better interest rate on that. We did purchase a CD at Royal Credit Union, and now I would like to transfer money to the 4M account for a good interest rate, higher than the CD actually, and it's liquid. So I would like to make a motion and probably do this as a treasurer's report because it'll be on next month's treasurer's report because it happens in May. But I think individually I would ask for that in the treasurer report rather than just put it on the statement and then you might not catch it right away or wait till the last minute to see it because we typically get these at the last minute. So with all that said, I'd like to make a motion to transfer $50,000 from our checking account at North Star to the 4M account managed or through the League of Cities.
Okay, I'm just making a note.
Any questions?
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That passes.
Okay. And lastly, we did this last month. I got kind of a month ahead. We went through the whole budget and everything. Hopefully it was in the packet, so I assume that you had a chance to look at it and read it. Are there any questions on it? Are there any suggested changes? Or can we go ahead and I will do the city apportionments, and then we'll have it in June for the final approval. And the city apportionments they will not change very much because we only increased the budget by $3,300. So the city apportionments will be quite similar. They'll be happy about that, I'm sure.
And so just to build on that, so,
Any suggestions?
yeah, and the actual vote on the budget will be at the June meeting.
If you think of something during the month, let me know. Earlier, better than later.
Okay,
Thank
any
you.
questions for Mike? Okay, board council report, Alan?
Thank you, Chair and Board. Nothing from Mike as far as surveillance and tickets. Of course, it's still early in the season, so we're barely past Mother's Day and fishing opener, and nothing to report from Matt, the conservation officer. As far as the structure, which is actually in Birchwood territory, I guess, that was reported, that's a fairly old structure, and there was a proposal at one time last year to actually remove it and extend some portion of the property, the building on the shore. And so since that was denied, the homeowners are now essentially rebuilding that structure. So it's authorized in the sense that it's not a new structure, so it's just considered maintenance of an existing structure. So that addresses that presence and that work that's being done there. So it was reported in, obviously, to the district by someone who just saw it going on and a concerned person. So that's the mystery behind that. And so I would stand for questions beyond that.
Any questions for Alan?
We'll hopefully get some permission slip for the other signage, but I guess, Scott, are you going to order those things? Scott?
Scott, are you going to order the signs?
Yeah, once we need to hear from the city, right?
Right, but I mean, once I can get a hold of one of them when they're done,
Yeah.
I'll make sure it goes to Mike so it gets put up at the
Yeah,
county.
and we're kind of going to our vertical design, so,
Yep, then that, I think if you do it once, you might as well just do the rest of them that way.
yeah.
Become sort of recognizable. Yeah. So, anyway.
Okay, any questions for Alan?
All right, thanks, everyone.
Okay, and we're on to item 12, announcements, adjournment. Sherry, do you have any announcements?
Just that our next board meeting is June 17th.
Okay, would anyone like to make a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign? Okay, we're adjourned. Thanks, everybody.